Do you pay for that?
Yes, you do. Well, as you all know, it's kind of what we call a crap out day. With you have socked in with low clouds, and you have your low clouds coming in from the east. You have your high clouds with the warm front that's eventually going to be moving through us up high above, and then you kind of have if you go to switch over to radar, you have a whole bunch of precipitation around. Some of you were talking about the rain earlier this morning. Even right before I woke up, I heard a downpour around 1:45 this morning or something like that, and I was like, has the rain already begun? But thankfully, the heavier rain that was over in parts of the Midwest is diving towards South Pittsburgh, down towards the Harrisburg area, and we're kind of missing out much of the steadier stuff per se. We go look at current conditions right now. It's overcast, but it's 59 here. But you go down to Pittsburgh, it's 71. You go over to Columbus, it's in the 80s. So it gradually warms up. Though I really doubt we get very much, maybe a couple degrees more here. Probably going progressively. That's probably going to be the same for even for places like Scranton, Williamsport. I even catch that Binghamton's at 50 right now. I don't believe as long as we stay socked in, we're going to maintain. We're not going to really rise very much. We'll all probably, if they can break out in Pittsburgh, they can probably try to sneak the 80-degree mark. Yesterday was interesting with the clouds around. I had a picnic at Penn State Golf Course that eventually falls on my shoulders for running, and I'm like, oh great, it's going to be cloudy, it's chilly. Then finally the sun broke at 2 o'clock.
Oh, it was so hot when you came out.
It was warm, I enjoyed it, and then right as the picnic ended at 4 o'clock, the clouds came right back in. I'm like, oh, I'll accept this. We'll make it all nice and warm, but...
Were you in the shade?
We were in the pavilion, so even with the clouds there, the light wind, it creates a breeze through there that made it a little chilly, but thankfully reached in the 70s. Today we won't be so lucky. Though, as you all kind of are aware, we have a nice summertime ridge kind of plowing in for the next couple of days. But before we get ahead of that, quickly take a look what the latest HRRR is showing for any precipitation today, later today. So the showers all kind of move on through the south. The HRRR shows it all kind of fizzling out as it tries to reach towards Baltimore, D.C., and we kind of remain in this very clammy, drizzly type situation through much of the day, and then that all kind of shifts tomorrow or later today as a warm front finally moves through. And so we'll take a look at 500, and essentially we have a nice ridge of high pressure that's kind of kept the southern plains through the Ohio Valley, deep south, southeast, and even in Florida extremely well above normal for days days upon days, 10-15 degree plus above normal here. And the system that we're going to want to watch is bailing out of the northern plains, and it's going to be moving across the upper Midwest. But as it does so, the high pressure system that we have in New England will finally kind of slowly move eastward. The warm front associated with the system as it's moving through Ontario will move through. And what happens is that we get to have a nice little battleground in New England setting up for Wednesday. We're somewhat also going to be in the battleground. It's going to be between the clouds and the warmth. How much clouds we even see here will determine how warm we get. And where the front sets up even across New York, and by that I mean upstate New York into New England, again determines how warm we're going to get in here, New York City, Scranton. The stat that we were using at the office today, so we're forecasting tying the record high in New York City for Wednesday at 90. The last time they saw that, you have to go back into the 1940s. Well, 90 there, but Scranton only forecasting, I believe, 79. So it's where how far south those clouds come is essentially going to determine kind of how warm we're going to get. And then quickly along with that, how fast essentially what this front's going to become, the backdoor cold front for Wednesday, is going to move through here. It moves faster, not going to warm up as much. If it's slower, we could even be maybe getting into the mid 80s. But the front moves through Wednesday night, and then what happens is we have another system, and some of it is tropical moisture that's enhancing it from the tropical storm off the the western coast of Mexico. If I try to pronounce it, I will butcher it. It's like I do with every other name. But that's going to help influence, and that's what's actually, because of the enhancement and essentially the zone from, let's say, just from like Milwaukee down through Lubbock and west of Albuquerque is kind of be a zone where they could see several inches of rain through Thursday. So some places could see upwards of 8-10 inches of rain, which for we're already kind of in the harvesting period could be detrimental to field work, but even trying to get ready for the winter planting. That all this rain could be a problem, and I know I believe it was Iowa, the parts of the upper Midwest do not need the rain. They've already had substantial flooding within the last month or so, so any additional rain will just be detrimental to that. But this front here, should I get on the right time, kind of stalls out over us, southern New England, and the system that's going to be kind of riding along it, that's going to have the tropical moisture from tropical storm in eastern Mexico, is going to ride along it, and Thursday is kind of going to turn out kind of another crummy day here. More like, instead of today where we just have the clouds, some drizzle, maybe it rains for 10-20 minutes, this is going to be more of your stratiform rain where it's going to last for several hours, maybe 6, 7, 8 hours, and it's going to probably be, again, like today, upper 50s, maybe we try and eke out into the lower 60s. I know some guidance is showing that we should get into the 70s, but I don't believe that if we're going to have the front kind of stall over us, get into the 70s with the rain, with the stratiform rain. So I have a hard time seeing that. So it's going to be a crummy day Thursday, but Friday we finally will start to dry out, just in time for homecoming, and we're going to be, high pressure kind of moves in, so in the morning we'll have the northerly flow, then become very light and variable for the evening time, so it should make for a nice homecoming, which if those who were here last year remember, it was kind of on the clammy, chilly side at the time. I don't believe it rained, but it was just very much like today. And then finally, as we go through, this area of high pressure moves through and kind of stays around, so it makes actually for a decent day on Saturday for another dry football game. I don't expect any lightning delays this time for the game. The interesting fact is we do have to watch this system out here, out in the Midwest into the upper Midwest as it progresses looking forward. That could be potentially problematic for us later next week. It might not reach here, the front might not actually reach here, but what's behind it, if we were to go out further, is this conglomerate of precipitation, kind of another storm riding along the wave. The European, the last couple of days, have been showing something kind of stalling out across the Ohio Valley down in the deep south, which would be much needed rain. The GFS has been slower and finally caught on today's run. There's still some timing differences, but if we're looking for when essentially the drought-like conditions that have been prevailing over these areas will come to an end, we're looking at potentially next week as where they could get some beneficial rains, and given how dry it's been, and if they do get pockets of heavy rain, we could be looking at a localized flooding situation because the ground won't be able to absorb the water so fast. Any questions in regarding to the local forecast? All right, so we'll move along. So the hurricane that has survived the conglomerate of last week is Lorenzo out in the Atlantic. Currently right now, let's see where it can go. Currently right now it is still not a days away, but it's still several hundred miles away from the Azores, which are all under a hurricane warning at the current time. It is, as I believe, it was still a Category 2 hurricane. And what's interesting is that, just like all the others, they have kind of been recurring, is that Lorenzo is going to be rapidly moving, it's going to be accelerating to the northeast. And so, as you all kind of can see, later in the week, we have the problematic of it potentially impacting the British Isles. This has, and it's leading to a conglomerate of what is it going to do? Because if you take a look at the ensemble models, and we can show that right here, and I've thrown all the ones possible out there, including the European, including the UK Met ensembles, which is known as the MOGRAPs. There's either two solutions. It either curves off to the north, like which much of the early guidance or the hurricane guidance all kind of is suggesting, or is what some of the European models and what the MOGRAPs or the UK Met Office ensembles are showing, it's still curving into the British Isles. And so the question becomes, why do we still even this far out have some kind of a spread? And so I will show here, the big player is going to be this upper level low that's developing over the next couple of days. It's going to become the big play factor. And the reason why it's becoming the big play factor is the phase of the MJO that we're in. So a research student out in Czech Republic, or now it's, I believe, known as Czechia now, has done a master paper. His master thesis was weather patterns in the MJO for Europe. And he did it primarily for the winter time, from like November through March. But I've been playing around with it now, and we're in phase 1 of the MJO right now. And we have been for a while. It's been in an active phase of the MJO. And so what typically happens is, once it's in an active phase of the MJO, you have a lag time of when the weather pattern kind of develops over Europe. In MJO phase 1, the weather pattern is an Atlantic trough. If that's what we're essentially going to be developing, is an Atlantic trough with an upper low that's kind of going to be stalled for several days. So with Lorenzo, as it's accelerating to the north-northeast, the question becomes, does it get sucked up into the trough or into the upper low, or does this ridge of high pressure that's kind of based off northwest Spain inch itself just enough so that you kind of have a weakness along the ridge, and it breaks off and curves into the British Isles. So what we have on the top left is the GFS. You have the European on the right, and then you finally have the GFS ensembles on the bottom left. I haven't been really playing around with the deterministics when it comes to this. I've been more or less using the ensembles, which continue to show, at least the European continue to show, as they said, a split, with some going to the north, some curving into the United Kingdom. But the interesting fact is the UK Met ensembles continue for several days now to show it curving into the British Isles. Either it really wants a storm to happen, or it's catching on to something that the other models are not. And that's one of the models that is sneakily performing well, is the UK Met and its ensembles more recently. So, and what's also interesting to point out with this is, even though they say it's going to be an extratropical, NHC shows it being an extratropical storm with tropical storm type strength, some of the ensemble models of the European and even the UK Met are still showing it to still have hurricane force strength. I believe essentially a week at best, still at the latitude of Ireland, which is pretty impressive. And last time We even had something similar to that. You have to go back to 2017 with Ophelia, which slammed into Ireland and had gusts up to 121 miles per hour, if I recall correctly. They do happen. It's not rare, but it's also not often that you do have a hurricane go into the post tropical entities and still have maintained its strength and impact parts of Europe. But it's something to be aware of or kind of watch over the next few days to see what plays out. Because what happens if it does get caught up into the upper level low is it swings eastward, it kind of does a spin and gets absorbed into the storm system that is kind of just stalled just south of Greenland. And interesting, I did take a look at the European ensembles, and the European ensemble mean showed this this upper low here, kind of a little bit farther to the east of the deterministic models in the GFS ensembles, even on Thursday. So that's probably why there's many solutions heading off into the United Kingdom. And on the last note I'll end with is that for windstorm season over there, we are projecting another below average season. So an average is about 32 storms. We're going 27 to 31, with much of the activity in the first half of the season compared to the second.
What is the timing of that season?
So for us, for how we use it at work, is we go October 1st through April 30th. Obviously, technically even this season started off with a bang way back in mid-August. We had a windstorm. We can go into the naming convention over there, but that'll lead to another 20-minute rant that I'd rather not go down.
Who are we talking about here? The British Isles? Or Europe generally?
For the windstorm season,
Yeah.
Europe generally.
Okay.
You can get windstorms that don't even touch the British Isles, but can touch Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, and Netherlands. So you necessarily don't have to impact the British Isles with that. And by that we're also referring to storms that are producing at least wind gusts of at least 50 miles per hour that are fairly on the widespread, on the bigger scale. Any questions?
All right.
Well, thank you for guys having me.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, thanks for coming, everyone. Why am I drawing the blank? Dave Martin from the National Weather Service will be here next.
Because you're Patriots.
Yikes. I didn't even end the stream yet, Dr.